The time is just gone 16 minutes past 9 as we continue with our broadcast this morning. Now, in the second half of the show, we will be taking a look at the high cost of living becoming unbearable. And with the latest petrol hike, we've seen electricity has gone up as well. Bird flu. Now, this obviously is sounding quite ominous in terms of the shortage of chickens, but also how is this likely to impact on the cost of eggs, for example. And so we will be unpacking with that with Mervyn Abrams very, very shortly. But what we've also learned is the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Toko Didisa, saying that the impact of avian flu on egg prices won't be that adverse despite widespread shortages and the cost of eggs rising sharply over the last few months. Now, where does this actually leave you and I as the consumer? And what is the government doing? The government is saying they're working with the industry to ensure that there is not going to be any adverse impact in terms of shortage or what they need. And if there is a scarcity, they would try and minimize the impact. But do we believe this? And this is the question we are asking as we joined by Mervyn Abrams this morning. Mervyn, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and good morning to all your listeners.
Well, clearly, Mervyn, the cost of living is becoming unbearable in almost every way whatsoever. And all we are seeing is just hike after hike after hike to the extent that people cannot live anymore. There are people that are going hungry. There are people that don't even know when the next meal is coming from. And it is clear that we are in a very precarious situation and dangerous as well, considering what is playing out around us.
Yes, so the situation around the cost of living has really become dire. One example of that is that the Department of Health has issued a statement to say that about 15,000 children were hospitalized with malnutrition last year. We believe that that is just the tip of the iceberg and that there is greater levels of hunger across the country because households can no longer afford to buy a basket of sufficient and nutritious food.
Yes, Mervyn. Uh, Mervyn, are you here? Are you here with us still?
Yes,
Oh, sorry,
I can
sorry,
hear you.
sorry. I thought we just lost you there for a minute. But what you are saying is absolutely critical. It's absolutely important because together with the poverty cycle that we are experiencing, there is also this problem of food scarcity in the country. So on the one hand, people cannot afford to buy a basket of nutritious food, but there is also a huge scarcity of food, and we see this is going to happen with regard to chicken. We know many people actually moved away from red meat and started eating chicken because it was cheaper. But now we see avian flu, so we're going to see a shortage of chicken. Prices are going to obviously go up, and obviously this is going to have an impact right across the board.
Yes, so we are expecting that chicken prices will increase. What we can do, though, is that we can import greater quantities of chicken, but that will, of course, raise the price, as well as of eggs. So the scarcity is not going to be too much of the issue. The cost, that's going to impact much higher. Now, it is important to know that chicken and eggs, other than tinned poultry, are perhaps the cheapest forms of protein. And of course, we need protein, particularly for children, in order to avoid child stunting. So, and of course, other health issues. So, not only do we need to ensure that we have sufficient supply of chicken and eggs, we will be calling on government to subsidize some of these costs should the chicken prices and egg prices become absolutely out of reach for ordinary people. And this is important in terms of South Africa's long-term economic stability, because if we don't feed our children properly, then we will see greater amount of exposure to disease. We will see greater need for our health services. We could also see that our educational outcomes is negatively impacted, as well as our economic productivity. So it is critical that we get a supply line of affordable protein available for South African households.
Well, certainly, Mervyn, and what you're saying is sometimes we don't realize it. We think this is just a simple case of bird flu or avian flu, but the manner in which you put it, and when you look at the consequences, and you're saying, how this is likely to impact on education, on health, on children, and on families in general. But talking about the government and a government subsidy, and I'm not too sure, because recently we've been hearing rumors about the government running out of money, and where is all this money going to come from if we are expected from the government to subsidize any impact or any negative impact of this problem we are faced with.
So we do have a revenue issue, but it is important that we look at the budget in terms of what is the priorities for the country. Now, it is true that there are not enough taxpayers, but it is also true that the way the budget is structured at the moment contains a lot of wastage. So, for instance, we probably have more politicians that we pay a salary to in South Africa than we actually need. So can we begin to cut back on the state salary expenditure, not with regard to teachers or doctors or street sweepers or nurses, but rather people in the top echelon? I mean, do we need such a big cabinet, for instance? Do we need all these provincial legislatures? And do we need those numbers? So we have to actually really look at our current budget, see where we can cut back in order to make money available for that which is critical for the long-term economic sustainability of the country.
I agree with you, Mervyn. In fact, you talk about priority and prioritization. The priority at this point in time, as far as the government is concerned, is to corrupt, to steal, to pay people for doing nothing, placing wrong people in the wrong jobs, the bloated bureaucracy that you speak of, and all of that put together tells us that these priorities obviously are directed in an adverse way, in the wrong direction. The priorities are actually all wrong. But that leaves people like yourself and myself, like civil society, people on the ground. And we know for a long time the bloated bureaucracy has been a much talked about subject, to the extent that there were commitments made by the government to reduce the size of this bloated democracy, but it's never happened. We're actually seeing it increasing. It's going the other way.
So we have seen some cutbacks, but it's cutbacks in the wrong area. So, for instance, we need more doctors and more nurses. A doctor or a nurse or a teacher makes a much more important input into South Africa's future than does a politician. So it is about cutting back at that level of bureaucracy in order to make money available for food subsidization and for increased employment of doctors and nurses and teachers and people like that, which makes a positive impact into South Africa's future. But I also need to say that the reason why households are not able to afford sufficient food is because of the low level of wages in South Africa. Now, we have historically a low wage trajectory because how other countries are dealing with this with this high cost of living crisis is that households have savings. Currently, the South African household does not have any savings. So we cannot maneuver these high prices, particularly when it is issues outside of our control. Like, for instance, the drop in the value of the rand, which makes petrol prices more expensive, etc., which then has a knock-on effect on food prices. So we don't have sufficient savings at household level, and so we cannot deal with these increases. And the reason for that is because of low wage trajectories and high unemployment.
Well, definitely. But Mervyn, again, at the end of the day, once again, people need to live. People need to survive. They need to have a nutritious meal. Children need to grow up. All of this, at the end of the day, is impacting quite severely on the government. What the government needs to do is act with a sense of urgency, looking at people like yourselves, what are we actually doing about it? Are we approaching government? Are we telling them, listen, you need to sit up, you need to take notice because these are the potential problems that may arise?
So we do know that the cabinet, about a month or 2 months ago, has given a directive to the ministers in the economic cluster to look at a plan for household food security from the perspective of affordability and access, etc. Now, that was announced in the media. We are struggling to find out where are they calling for public comment? Are they discussing with anybody? Because we have not heard any other steps. And so we would like to engage with government on these matters, but currently we don't know who to engage with. That is the problem that faces many of civil society.
Well, definitely, Mervyn, and hopefully, at some point in time, the government will sit up and take notice. But for now, we thank you, as always, for coming on, for talking to us right here on Salam Media. All the best to you, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you to listeners.
Mervyn Abrams with us this morning, unpacking the cost of living that is becoming unbearable in the country, and with the bird flu, egg prices, chicken prices, petrol prices, electricity prices. Where is all of this going to end? The time is just gone, 9:29. We come back, we'll be focusing on World Teachers Day, honoring teachers that have made their mark in the education field.